All right, we're being recorded, so everybody watch what you say, okay? You too, Steve Bowman. So, good afternoon, welcome. Thank you to all who have made the effort to be here in person for the State Water Plan Task Force meeting. I think it really helps to be kind of eye to eye and face to face, to have some great collaboration of the team as we move forward. We do have a fairly full agenda today, and I think that we do want to, the main maybe focus of our business, besides the updates that we seek to get every time we gather, is to really focus in on the business of the State Water Plan Task Force. And I mean that in that now that we are in codified and in statute, that statute calls for us to put together how we organize, how we do business as a task force. And so that's, I think, will be some of the bulk of our discussions this afternoon, and really help create and form how we as a task force move forward and really expand into to great things for the state of Illinois and the water resources of the state. Privileged to have former DNR Director Mark Miller, now Deputy Director, what is Director? Deputy Director at PRI, that's been able to join us in person today as well. And so I think it's been a little while since he's been in these halls, so it's great to have you back, sir. And happy Meg is here, normally joining from the Chicago office, but thrilled to have you here as well in person and as with the rest of you. Acknowledge Kevin Romo, who's also in person. He's on DNR's legislative team. And so really listening in just as an observer, certainly interested in when we get into the legislative portion of our agenda today. And so before I turn it over to Wes to continue to take us through our agenda and to get into the matters at hand, I do want to announce that this will be, I will be retiring at the end of the year. And so I'll be, Rick Pullman will be stepping in as the acting director of water resources. And of course, the legislation that I just mentioned cites him as, or the chair of Water Plan Task Force as the director of the Office of Water Resources. So Rick will be, come January 1st, we'll be assuming that role in his new acting responsibilities. Wes Couture, however, will continue to captain the ship, if you will, or first mate it. I'm not quite sure. He's going to keep us moving forward as he has done so well to date. It is, I've been asked to come back under contract, and so we'll still be here to potentially participate in some of the activities of the State Water Plan Task Force as we decide and we move forward. So not gone completely, but officially stepping out of the role as director that I've had the privilege of enjoying for the last 7 years. And really, as we work to bring this task force back to what it is here this afternoon. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Wes, and if you can take us through the agenda, sir.
Yeah, first I do want to say it's kind of nostalgic to everybody being back here at DNR. The last time we were all together is when we agreed to actually move forward on the state water plan. So that was back in like December of 2019, I think. So I'm glad to have everybody here as we kind of acknowledging it's been almost 5 years since we were all back in the building together. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and go through our agenda here. And first thing is, you all should have received the meeting minutes from the July meeting. Does anybody have any comments or edits to those meeting minutes? If not, I'll be looking for someone to make a motion to approve and accept those meeting minutes as is.
A motion.
Motion by Laura, seconded by, you following there? And all in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Well, the meeting minutes pass. With that, we'll go on to the legislative updates, and Lauren, I don't know if you want to speak on behalf of the official codification.
Sure, I'll start that and then turn it over to others to maybe update us as appropriate. So, as noted in my opening remarks, the State Water Plan Task Force is now codified in what may be cited as the Water Plan Task Force Act, right? And so, now that we are codified, and as I mentioned, one of those items listed in the legislation is that the task force shall be responsible for developing membership voting and operational rules. And so that's part of what we'll get into here in a few minutes, along with annual reports and creating subcommittees and special reports and reviewing statutes and to that nature. And then also into research needs, water data management, which we'll get into as well, and then into some of the funding and appropriations. So thank you, and really Kevin Romo, who's joined us in person this afternoon. Thank you to you and your team. A lot of work was put into advancing that and helping get our sponsors and so on to make that. So thank you there. Another piece of legislation that a couple more pieces, I guess, that we are looking at the moment. One is kind of simple in that legislation that passed this last session included the carbon sequestration bill, and certainly PRI had a lot to do with what went into that, and IEPA certainly in their regulatory roles there. But from my perspective, one of the greatest things that came out of that piece of legislation was the creation of the Water Resources Fund. And so now we have a designated piggy bank within the DNR anyway, or within recognized by GOMB, that funds can be dedicated to for all sorts of water resources related purposes, many of which come straight out of the water plan that we've developed there. So that's a big thing. But one of the first things I want to try to do is that a number of years ago, actually under probably Director Miller's leadership there, fees or permit application fees were created to help supplement revenues that came into the agency to get us off of general revenue funds in those cases. And so today that money goes into the boat fund within DNR, and there's a lot of account owners, if you will, to that fund. And so one of the more straightforward pieces of legislation we're trying to consider moving on is to simply redirect that into the Water Resources Fund to be dedicated for regulatory purposes. So that's one piece of legislation that's in the works. And then, of course, we're getting into, as we touched on, I believe the last time that we met, was the update or modifications to the state or to the Water Use Act of 1983. And so we're not going to spend a lot of time on that today. We introduced that the last time we came together as a task force, but that really is kind of updating to reflect a lot of the way we do business today already. It's just the statute hasn't kept up with us. So we'll be doing some of that update. I will tell you that the governor's office is also interested in potentially tweaking what we've put forward as more of a groundwater and surface water withdrawal regulatory kind of action to potentially include fees for public water use, including Lake Michigan. And so there's some tweaking yet to be done. I think that's homework probably on my desk to get done for the governor's office. So there is an opportunity yet that we might see a derivative, if you will, of that bill, depending on how discussions go forward with the governor's office. So those are kind of the legislative updates from the DNR water resources perspective. And at this point, I would open it up to see what other legislative initiatives that any of the other members might be trying to put forward for the upcoming legislative season. All right, well, I'm sure, like from Kevin's perspective, the department has plenty of others, but from a water perspective, I think those are the ones we're looking at. And we will, I guess one final comment I will make is that, of course, if we look to do that derivative where we start to charge for the use of public waters, obviously like Michigan being a public water, but the Illinois and the Sangamon and all those others, whether it's publicly designated water withdrawals, the key there will be outreach, and trying to create the right kind of outreach and message beforehand, to really orchestrate how that kind of legislation moves forward in the right light. So it's not seen as something that just suddenly comes flying in a left field and creates all sorts of turmoil. So that is another aspect, and some of that could tie into what we as a task force get involved with as we advance that. So I'll stop there, turn it back over to Wes.
Yeah. I think the next thing we have on the agenda, Lauren, is, I think, about a month ago, I sent out an email about grants received by the State Water Plan Task Force agencies. I think Lauren had a little direction on that and purpose of that, so.
It does. It all comes back to me, and I'm gonna try to get everything in before I retire that I want all the rest of you to get accomplished, but, so really where this stems from, I had the opportunity to participate in a Aspen Institute America Flood Coalition workshop here a month or so ago. And to me, it was very evident that the other states, maybe out of necessity, maybe I'll start there, were certainly collaborating pretty tightly on all kind of grant opportunities that were available. And so for as an example, DOT, because they use this, the DOTs across the nation have grant opportunities available to them for resiliency. But it's only available to state DOTs, okay? Well, our DOT may have, opportunity to take advantage of that, and or we, as other entities of the task force, may identify projects or uses for that kind of funding that would be beneficial to advancing any of our recommendations, other things that we're trying to get accomplished as a task force. The idea being, should we then be collaborating with IDOT to say, hey, if you're not using that for what other specific resiliency needs of the department, would you be willing to partner with us, whether that's a DNR or Department of Ag or, IEPA or whoever, to go after that grant funding opportunity. And so that's why I was trying to kind of gather what from each of the entities and each of the agencies on the task force, what grants are you going for now? What are you aware of that maybe you're not going for, but you've been told you could go for, that we might partner better to offer it up to some of the other entities on the task force that might be a good applicant or might have a good chance of success of achieving grant dollars into resiliency in Illinois, right? And so it's that concept. I will tell you that Hideki Benja out of the governor's office, she's located in our DC office, kind of has the same vision. And so she's looking at that from a grander scope across state government. But certainly, I've communicated with her a little bit to say, well, hey, as a task force, we can certainly help you as we focus on, from a water perspective, what kind of opportunities are out there and how then we might, as a state, try to break down some of those silos and see if we want to take, grants certain ways. And so it's not a commitment that we are going to go after all grants out there. It's really trying to be better as a state of awareness of what we could go for, should all the moons align, that it makes sense for us to do that. And so that's what's behind the request, to try and get an idea of what other grants or potential for grants exist out there from agencies that we might share, in a crisscross pattern, right? That Might be something that IEMA shares with Department of Ag, I don't know, right? But it's just kind of that good governance, awareness, and the governor's office is already trying to do that, so that's where I think we as a task force can play a role there, and from the water perspective, help out and have a good overview of what that is. So I'll stop there, but that's what's behind that. We're under no particular deadline at this point, and so it would just be us trying to collaborate, communicate with one another as we see, hey, what might go in on that page, or what could we consider that others might take advantage of if we ourselves, from our own program perspective, do not. So, thank you.
Yeah, so anticipate I'll probably be providing a follow-up email, just asking of any grants that you may be aware of, now that you've heard a little bit more in-depth explanation of why we're asking for that information, and maybe a little bit more easy to want to dive into that a little further. So with that,
Couple questions.
you first, go ahead.
Question on that, Wes, do we see that being an area that we could post the information that others share, that we could all see at some point, and then provide that opportunity for others to at least have that notification, and then use that information to potentially partner or work to collaborate? I guess what I'm looking for is, where will that be provided to the group and how?
Yeah, so I'll look to Lauren, but I guess I envision us creating a document, maybe that has links that you can further find out more information about it, but that would be shared within the task force. I don't know if it would be needed to be shared on our actual website out there for everybody. I think this is more just for the state agencies, to give them the opportunity to collaborate a little bit more and have kind of a multi-discipline benefits to projects and these grant funds. Unless Lauren, you have anything?
No, that's exactly, I was thinking that it was internal, right? It's not necessarily out there for everyone, but I think it makes it just a good governance kind of a structure that fits in there, the way we do that. Of course, now I've forgotten our new grants, what's the name of that program? Anyhow, our new grants administrative kind of software that we use to manage grants. But Amplifund, thank you, that's the word I was looking for. Amplifund, it also, I think, as part of its structure, has like grants out there, all kinds of grants, and I don't know if you can focus that, but we might talk with our own grants section about, is that something we incorporate in with that, or how do they play into that? But at this point, kind of just the initial, from a task force perspective, focused on those that might be out there that we could be aware of for in the future. Do we take advantage of that in some way as we're trying to implement recommendations, or as new things come to this task force we want to wrestle? Mark?
I think that this is a really good idea for this matchmaking feature, right? If we would sum it up. It might be helpful for the partners in the task force to hear kind of a stated scope of what might be available when we do the outreach to everybody, to remind them what they might be able to collaborate on. That might be helpful.
You just include kind of a summary paragraph of the purpose.
All the different types of areas that you might be, that people might be able to connect on.
Okay.
I'll take this time to promote a resource for us all. So the coastal program just put together a funding resources page where we are collecting and displaying all sorts of grant opportunities available, particularly federal opportunities for state agencies and state partners. So I'll make sure we can send that out to, it's hot off the presses. So we'll be emailing about that on our newsletter soon too, but one step to help support these initiatives.
Anybody else? All right, and Chad, feel free to just speak up. We should be able to hear you come through okay, or enter anything into chat if you would like. You're kind of trying to keep an eye on the chat box down at the bottom corner as well. So All right, with that, we will go on to the business of the State Water Plan Task Force. As you all know, as Lauren already mentioned, we are officially codified. The legislation takes effect January 1st, so Lauren won't ever be officially a member, but I think Lauren and I discussed that we were talking that it would be important for us to start having discussions about how we function as a task force. We've kind of been very informal in the past decade that I've been a part of the task force, and I think it's maybe we try to be a little bit more formal with approving minutes and things like that, but we have no bylaws. Who votes, how many agencies, does every agency get one vote, and how's that all come out? So I think we wanted to just take a moment to discuss some of these factors a little bit. And Lauren, do you want to lead the discussion or?
Sure, I'm happy to do that. Thank you, Wes. And so kind of building off of that, obviously the funding and the voting are there. I'm gonna give the credit or the blame, one or the other, to Laura Kiefer, who's here, who really, I think Laura, as we were putting together the state water plan, as we got back up to speed and talked about codifying it, who really said, hey, this is an opportunity. This is where we really, the task force can be something more powerful than it already is, and really can be utilized in a very good governance, very positive way. And she was absolutely right in that the opportunities here, and just like we've said to folks like Kevin Romo, as legislation comes up all the time that they want a special study on the Kaskaskia or something, and in that legislation, they want to create a task force that does that. And so just as one example, we've said, no, you don't need to do that. You have a task force of water-related agencies that legislation should simply mention us. And then we, as the leadership in water in this state, will create whatever other subcommittees or other groups under our leadership that does that. And then really that, from the few that we've already dealt with, this last legislative session, that rang a pretty good bell with the legislators. That does make some sense. So, Laura, I would certainly turn to you too, as, when it gets to the other, things that we could and should consider, as the group that we are now, as leadership in the realm of water in the state of Illinois. I guess where I want to see this going is, and as we've talked a little bit already, I see this task force creating a subcommittee, as we just mentioned, to focus on bylaws. And I think that's where we attack a lot of this and create a structure. And so today, I'm open to hearing, just conceptual thoughts on what could be considered by that subcommittee for the bylaws. Certainly interested to know if any of you on the task force are interested in being in that subcommittee to create bylaws. But I think we need a group that puts together a draft, takes a look at some other bylaws and creates a draft of bylaws. And from that, then we have a document that we can generate future discussions or debate or improvements from that point forward. So would probably, I don't know if we have to now entertain a motion now that we're so, but I would move that we create a subcommittee to develop draft bylaws for consideration by the board. Any thoughts on that? Well, certainly, as chair, I guess, let me know that whether or not you're interested in being in that bylaws group. I guess now that, I've announced that I'm leaving it, coming back under contract. Rick, it's certainly at Rick Coleman's call there, but that's something I could probably continue given my history, and something I'd be able to maybe dedicate a little more time to, in a focused manner, as opposed to trying to do that along with the day job like we all try to do. So certainly work with a team and we could do that.
I would like to help.
Okay, any others?
And if you're joining us virtually, feel free to speak up, state your name, or type something in chat if you'd be interested in participating in that bylaw committee.
Who doesn't want to write bylaws? I mean, wow.
I'm part of some other groups that have recently made bylaws, so
Okay.
I was gonna try and pull some of that together.
That would be wonderful.
It's better to chew over something that's already there than
Right, absolutely.
beat that up and then.
Okay, well, if any others think later on, just let us know, but we'll,
I'll be around to ask people.
yeah, we'll collaborate on that and move forward to, have that
I'll
subcommittee.
include it in a follow-up email as
That'd be
well,
great.
just allowing anybody to reply if they're interested in participating in that. But I'd also kind of promote for topic leads or anybody else, if there's any subcommittees we want to officially designate. I know we've in the past have a drought response task force that again was all through the state water plan task force committee, and to officially declare them and who's that partner, who's participating in that drought task force, or maybe it's a flood and mitigation task force, or things like that. And what circumstances does that committee come together for drought? Maybe that's when we hit, D3 or D4 in the state, then we activate and we have certain meetings, and this is what's going to be discussed. So that's kind of the purpose. That way we can communicate with our stakeholders, the communities that are impacted, and reach out to them and really kind of have a planned organization for the purpose of that sub-task force or committee, however you want to.
The drought plan has a lot of that, how it gets enacted and everything.
Exactly.
A little updating and
So this would just more officially,
coalescing it better. I mean, it needs updating.
yeah.
We all have time, but still, it needs.
I think that's a recommendation of the task force or of the plan is to update that. So yeah, I think Wayne and I talked about that a little bit, but that's definitely something we need to discuss more. David, I see your hand went up. You have a comment?
Oh, thank you. Well, I think that's a absolutely great idea to have a subcommittee related to drought. I think it would also be useful to have a subcommittee related to flooding, the other extreme. We'd have to discuss what we mean by flooding, urban versus, various waterways and things like that. But I do think there would be opportunity for a subcommittee to focus on flooding events as well.
Very good. Yeah, so noted. So is there another flood committee of sorts?
Well, and I think there's, particularly when we get into like urban flooding, right? And that's kind of a whole new,
Right.
I shouldn't say new, this has been around a little while, but that aspect of flooding and where we go, because most of it's unmapped, at least officially, and it's a lot different from your traditional NFIP, FEMA flooding. And so that's an area where, yeah, perhaps this task force decides to build off of what's already been done to date related to urban flooding, and maybe decide, do we want to do a report or something, or make recommendations for improvement there. Another thing I'll mention, just to kind of prime the pump on some of that, this, who and what the task force is, is that in fact, several of us are gonna meet afterwards to have more discussions about the Illinois Integrated Water Information Center that's included in the water plan. But, could this task force serve as like the board of directors for the operation of that kind of a structure and entity? And so those are the kinds of things that I think we need to think about of what is the task force, what should it be, what should it not be, when we get into some of the other. So I just throw that out there as another area that we could think about or explore, that kind of something that's beyond just the water plan. And that's really where again, Laura Kiefer kind of, opened the thought process there that, okay, yes, while we came together and we created a state water plan, but that just like is one aspect of what the task force can do? And so what are those other aspects that, that this group could, and maybe should be doing for water resources in the state of Illinois beyond just a floodplain? So I'll stop there. That's all I had for that one.
Maybe it's one of the topic, about 2 weeks ago, Laura and I, we was in the Great Lake Committee. And in Great Lake region, they started our discussion on the water usage for the AI data center. And I bet some of you probably have seen the news on that. Although this is not something we can really discuss in the task force, but I just kind of want to bring this up to the group. Is that something we want to start tackling? And not only the Great Lake states, but also some foundations, like Chase Foundation, we had some discussion. Right. That this issue just, it seems like a kind of curve. And not only a data, AI data center, but also our governments are interested in online computing, so the online facilities. One of the,
I can tell you that I've had several conversations because especially with relational commission, because that's what there's a advantage about. Yeah, we had an allocated already that just got an allocation like 2 years ago. And they aren't even on water yet. And they were asking for an increase in allocation because they have all these data now that they have like Michigan Water, they have all in they're in a growth area. They got all these companies coming in with data centers in. And they're seeing it as big bucks because they can sell power and water. So.
oh, you got a point. The complexity of this problem is not just water. It's a water energy nexus.
Yes.
They are both come together. And so that's why we're worried about, we already kind of heard because that business is moving so fast.
Yeah.
And although it's not a regular topic when we talk about this group, but we might want to sing about this.
In some sense, that it's in the realm of water supply planning, then, instead.
Yeah.
Okay.
It does get into, yeah, supply planning, but it also gets into, you know, and from the Great Lakes perspective, there's, you know, talk about, well, is there Great Lakes groundwater, right? And then does a compact start to cover, you know, groundwater resources that might be there, but for the Great Lakes, you know, those kinds of activities. And really that's, I think those kinds of discussions belong or should at least start with this task force because we have all of the right, you know, academic and programmatic people together to deal with that and then to influence policy that might be generated as part of that and also to then inform leadership, whatever, you know, whatever leadership that might be, whatever time on how to respond as we are part of the Great Lakes Basin, for example. That, you know, that might actually be, you know, maybe we do end up creating a white paper or something on that topic, right? It would make sense for this kind of you know, an organization, an entity to voice, provide some leadership and its guidance on where the state of Illinois is at or how we should go forward.
I think that the question will have got not only from leadership, but also from the legislative companies.
Right.
So I think we better start preparing for that. And when they ask that question, they probably want to answer really quick.
And if I can frame, I think this is a great suggestion. Another way to frame this is and the task force can support Governor Pritzker's $500 million investment in quantum computing. If we can get ahead of what the water needs are going to be and try to be a resource for that investment moving forward, that probably would position this task force very well.
Right. I think, you know, with energy, another just to throw out there for keeping everybody's minds engaged on that, you know, like wind energy, you know, and should it end up legislatively, I think there's supposed to be some groups formed. I don't think anything's moved there, you know, should it be where when we're talking about water-based, let's start there, not all wind energy, but, water-based floating wind turbines on public waters of the state, should this group be trying to set some of that policy and lack of leadership in other realms. Again, yeah, those are the kinds of things that beyond focusing on just the water plan and recommendations that this group can expand into. And so circling back, we'll need bylaws that reflect the ability to help us be and do who it should be.
And just a point to that, in 2010, DNR put out a report on water-based wind energy.
Right.
I can't remember which one of the two of you were involved with that, but I think the agency put forward that as a request, a piece of legislation from leader Robin Gable. So just give you some history perspective there.
Absolutely. Anything that would build from that, I think.
Yeah. Anything else on business? I think, Laura and I and a few others that may be interested will maybe coordinate about, putting together some direct bylaws and maybe get that sent around for some feedback and thoughts, see if there's anything that we're need to include that we may, have not considered, and then eventually bring that up to a vote. So that's, how I see that proceeding forward. Any other discussions on business of the state water plan task force before we move on?
So regarding what we talk about the data center and the quantum computing, if there's any information we want to share and there's any way, or I'm happy to be Harvard to help to gather information to distribute to the group, right? Because I think there's a lot of information flowing around right now, right? In large quantity of it. So if we can somehow kind of put a platform at least, and then we can share information, I think that would be really helpful.
I think one way to go about that is, think about which topics we have in the topic leaves and reaching out to, like Way with the water supply, trying to think of what other, maybe the water laws and regulations, if anything would ever come up to that regard. Climate change would really come into that or not?
That's why I think the challenge is really complicated. Is water energy nexus is financial and also with the business development too. So I cannot really see where it's really based on what we have right now. And this thing evolves so fast. That's why I want to this up as a quick discussion. So I don't really see one topic we have like just for this one.
I understand, right, that, over like geothermal, right, but geothermal can be cooling as well as heating, correct?
But it's just one of it. I mean, for the data center, the cooling, then the evolved, you need water for cooling, you need electricity for cooling. And then in the industry right now, the term they use is to blow, it's called to blow the grid on that. So yes, it's highly water related device. Even energy related to water, wind is one of them. It's just more complicated. That's why I feel urgency. We didn't really tackle this. But
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the things, obviously through our position too, is that we, in state water plan is that we, there's legislation that allow water reuse. There's already a big push for that. But I mean, this could be another opportunity where, it's been more focused in the 6-county area, but it could be something that, maybe in other parts of the state might be something available to make use of that water, especially if they can draw it out. And, I don't know what the requirements of the chemistry of water actually are, but it's something that could be investigated because we have plenty of wastewater coming down the Illinois River. It's like, it'd be good to be able to, maybe not be looking at a community that has an allocation of water and have them use that on there, because we're probably going to get kind of a crooked eye from some of the other states doing that because they're also involved in that and they don't get to do it. So
yeah, and that's a very good point. At a capacity with our, because for example, in our state, we are not discussing about semiconductor manufacturing, but in the other state, that's a big discussion too. And that is lot of water. And right now study, and actually the semiconductor manufacturer are very efficient on using reclaimed water, the gray water system. That's what they're focused on right now. And then even at U of Y, we have a huge group of research people working with international group on how to make the process even better. And because, again, we are behind the curve. And it's not like we didn't plan it 5 years ago. Just think about when we start heard this buzzword AI. It's just the last 2 years, it's just so fast already. So that's another complexity of it is the gray water and water. How is this going to be part of the solution? And then, of course, microreaction is also on picture right now, and it's not using the traditional water we are dealing with. Heavy water is not even on picture. Right now, they are talking about liquid sodium and how is that going to impact water reuse. So that's why I say that the information is flowing daily basis so fast. And we are lagging behind.
I think that's interesting what you say, because I'm pretty familiar with all of our recommendations, and we've always said that those recommendations were at that point in time. And we have all of our things, this is something that was multifaceted, covered by many, but never really completely addressed by any. So that's maybe, again, we've always said this is a living task force, that if new needs come up, that might be another reason to have a new committee, because it wasn't really addressed in our current recommendation.
Okay, good discussion.
Yeah. With that, we'll just start, go on to just mentioning the task force plan and progress we've made. So I just wanted to, just encourage everybody to keep making progress on those recommendations. That's the purpose of why we had the recommendations. Make sure you provide me those updates as you can. The next task force meeting will be in January, which is also when we publish our annual report on our progress. So it'd be really important to get all the updates in, just to kind of show you all where we've been at as of right now. Right now we're at 146 recommendations, 68 have been started, and of those started, we're about a third of the way through those. That's with 7 of the 13 sections reporting, so just over half. And only 3 recommendations 100% completed. So just keep a reminder, keep those moving, just to kind of show how that's progressed over time since we released the report in December of 22. How that progress has come along. So hopefully we'll have some good updates in the next quarter to share with our annual update. So with that, I think with each task force, we'd like to just do a quick round robin of the 13 topic leads, just to talk about updates, and maybe I'll pull up the participants list so I can glance over at your computer to see who's online and who's not online. So Jeff, it looks like we got you attending virtually. You have any updates on water quality, any milestones that you'd like to hit on?
Sure. I think, thanks, Wes. One of the things more broadly for water quality and also for long-term financing that we're the lead for is we're going to take a little bit more going into the future, take a little bit deeper dive into the recommendations as they are, really get both groups together in a more serious way. And not that we haven't been serious, but really look at it, the recommendations a little bit more to make sure. There's some that are kind of ongoing, that are a little harder to quantify how far we're getting them, and really get a better handle on how we can address those with some firm outcomes that we need to get at. One of the recommendations that we've seen some really good progress on is the PFAS fish monitoring, which is just about done. The equipment has been in place, and they're doing the sampling for it. And really, it's the fish tissue samples are being provided by the IDNR and analyzing for 34 PFAS analytes as well as the PCBs, and really getting that process of the collection and the sampling, or the getting them together, I think is a little bit, it's really falling into place. One of the things I was talking with Laura Kiefer about the groundwater recommendations, and talking about the need to work on those a little bit more. And then, because that one's one where there are some recommendations in there that we really need to focus on a little bit more. I'll also mention that the Green Infrastructure Grant opportunity, notice the funding opportunity is out there right now. We're accepting proposals due November the 20th on that one. And we're also having some new scoring on that takes into account the environmental justice issues a little bit more directly in it. So we're really trying to bring into the our grant programs a little bit more direct the environmental justice and the underserved communities component, which is one of the recommendations we've got there. And so that's it for water quality.
All right, but thank you, Jeff. Any questions for Jeff? Not hearing any. Jeff, I just want to say that's a good mention you made about reevaluating these recommendations. They're not meant to be set in stone. So we need to reevaluate those or tweak those to make them more easily measurable, with the intent that, you know, we're looking to move to completion. And I know a lot of individuals make comments about, well, this is an ongoing. Well, how do we measure that we're actually doing something in that recommendation, and such that we would essentially complete some kind of milestone within this 8-year period that we have to plan out? So just kind of a reminder to all topic leads to take that into consideration and make adjustments as we need to. Next, we'll move on to Dave. Dave, I assume you're still on?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear on our end.
Okay, terrific. Yes, we have several points under the climate change section. I'm going to focus on a couple of them. One is research and provide climate impact information on urban and fringe areas. And there are several groups working on that. We have NSF funding to do research on how heavy thunderstorms are affected by urban areas, and hopefully can develop a little better climatology of extreme storms and how they're impacted by areas like around Chicago and St. Louis and so forth. So we've made some progress on that. It's on the research side. It hasn't yet gone to any point where we want to share it to the public yet, but we are underway on some of that. And there are a couple of other places where we're actively looking for funding. One is developing online tools to look at agricultural practices. And there are several people that I've talked with and would like to continue to work with to seek funding for that. And also rapid melt events. That's something we've been interested in, and how that may, how rapid melt events, thinking mainly from the atmospheric side, how those propagate through the water system here in the state. And Trent is on here as well. Did you want to give any updates on the flash droughts work?
Well, maybe not the flash drought, but I did have two recommendations that are related. Numbers 2 and 3 under climate change are availability of future information, and then the availability of data on future climate, and then web-based toolkits. So the State Climate Office did get funding from NOAA, the National Centers of Environmental Information, And we're using that very small for a year to work with IEMA to develop a online interactive mapping-based portal that'll make future climate projections more usable for people who aren't used to churning through huge climate data sets. There's gonna be an ongoing thing. We're gonna have a series of workshops starting in Will County, probably here, not here, but Springfield area, and then in the Metro East for emergency managers and planners. That's coming up in the next few months to kind of beta test what they want and need so that it's user driven. And hopefully we'll have something online, depending on NCSA, the National Center for Supercomputing Applications at U of I is supporting it in kind for development. So hopefully we'll have something up online by the end of next year. So that would I don't know, Wes, if you need like percentages, that's probably 30% done, 20% done maybe. But hopefully by the end of next year, it'll be 100% done. So that would actually accomplish a couple of goals.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it. Yeah, we've been stuck on that 3 for a while. I'm chomping at the bit to have another one wrapped up, so. All right, any questions on climate?
Yeah, one more other thing. I know, Glenn, I believe Glenn is there. Did you have any updates that you wanted to include? I think Trent mentioned some of them already, toolkits and climate models, climate outlooks.
Right, well, the one thing that I might mention is the project that we're working on with OWR with the modeling of future climate change rainfall data. And that's something that also Marcus is working with us on. We're going to be wrapping that up at the end of this year. As far as the report is being written right now, the actual research side of the report is essentially done as far as the analysis is concerned. So we'll have more to report on that as far as an actual product to deliver by the end of the year.
And Glenn, I'd say that's something that I can almost see the task force coming out with a white paper on how to utilize that new research that's been coming out, making a recommendation of what do we want to do with that now that we have that information.
Particularly from a regulatory perspective, right? And I've been trying to glean from maybe other states, not too many other states are going down that road to the extent that we are. So yay us, but, I'm trying to see, well, how, if they are, what are you doing in terms of making that part of your regulatory program? Should we, when it comes to, if we're trying to map, or into mapping future flood risk or, those kinds of things, or if you're trying to design, and this is what went into the discussion of why we asked for this product to begin with, right? But, because we see again and again that like flood control reservoirs, particularly in the Chicago area, that were there to provide 100-year flood protection to, this community. We see today, on today's rainfall updates, that perhaps that's really a 40-year level of protection or something. And so then with that in mind, if you are developing some sort of a flood wall, reservoir, or whatever, should we then be requiring that from a regulatory, maybe that's just good design, if you're the design engineer on that, to take that into effect, but do we require that from a regulatory perspective? So that certainly is where a white paper or something out of this group would assist the state when we get into the regulatory realm of that perspective.
Something real quick that's gonna be inherent in this that maybe was less so in the previous bulletins is the large amounts of uncertainty that come from projections, future information. So there's model uncertainty, there's scenario uncertainty, there's internal climate variability. I think that's gonna be a full discussion maybe for this task force is if you're talking about regulation based off of the bulletins that provided a number, but that the certainty of that number is far less in this coming report than it will be in the previous reports. And so how does one make decisions based on that? I think it's a discussion.
Good science-based discussion for certain.
And I think along with the regulatory and design, just some outreach or what are our plans to let people know what's out there and before it's supplanted or something else.
Will there be in that report a recommendation for a reevaluation subsequent basis or frequency that's recommended? That's some.
I think it should be, yes, on a regular basis.
You had that in the water plan, the recommendations that Bulletin 75 is redone at least in the 10-year time. So that can probably be.
And we're not sure if we're gonna call this bulletin 76 and have it, some plans, or, that's maybe still to be discussed. So we haven't really gone there for that.
Yeah, well, the way that's being written up is intended to be as a standalone of this current research, not necessarily incorporating everything else from both 75 in one document, but maybe as a new appendix or something for both 75.
Before we jump by fives, but. Just a couple, a comment and a question. I know from, our involvement on in the Great Lakes, that the Great Lakes Commission, for example, is starting to want to take a much closer look at climate change impacts on agricultural practices and how that equates into water use. And so as climate change brings about agricultural opportunities for maybe different crops to be grown than were ever, feasible in the past, and or does that new crop source require a greater level of irrigation perhaps, or water use to run that? And so certainly the Great Lakes Commission and the basin is considering that within their climate change forethought. And so that we might give some thought to that from our perspective, although we don't have, in the Great Lakes Basin, we don't have a lot of, agriculture per se, but as general across the state, climate change is obviously impacting our entire state. And what does that mean from a water use perspective on other public waters or resources statewide?
Right.
A question I had, Dave, for you was you mentioned at the beginning the, the influence of thunderstorms and urban areas. Help me understand, is that the impact from the thunderstorms on urban areas, or the impact that urban areas, for example, additional, pavements and roofs and so forth has on the thunderstorms?
Yeah, in my particular area, my particular group, we're investigating how growing urban areas affect ongoing thunderstorms. The current thinking is that urban areas are really are pretty efficient at initializing thunderstorms. But if thunderstorms are coming from far away and move toward the city, we tend to see more of a weakening of the storms. But clearly there is work going on how heavy rain systems, including thunderstorms, affect urban areas. And that there are people there that can speak to that better than I can.
Good. All right. Well, we will move along to the next one. Thank you, Dave, and move on to integrated water management. Lauren.
Sure, and as I already alluded to, there is a group of us meeting after this meeting to continue to work on the Illinois Integrated Water Information Center. That's one of the recommendations out of that integrated water management. Certainly we have the codification, that was one of the requirements, so a checkbox there, but looking to now try to advance the ball on the Integrated Water Information Center. And to that effect, I guess I would report that, again, I've had an opportunity to reach out to a couple of other states that are going down a similar path. Florida is going down this path. North Carolina is going down this path. North Carolina has gone as far as securing the services of a consulting firm to help develop a framework. That's part of what we're going to be talking about more later this afternoon. Unfortunately, both of those states are currently in disaster recovery mode, and so certainly not gonna press on them to, hey, drop everything and get me your framework for your, information data center, but certainly, through the Aspen Institute, they've provided a nice, connection there that will tie us into the right folks. That, again, you know, like Laura was saying, it's better to look at something perhaps that's been done and glean from that, take advantage of some of that and build from that. And so that work is, continues. Thank you.
Any comments or questions to the integrated water management? Hearing none, moving on to long-term funding. I don't see Nadine on the list, so I guess Jeff or Christie from EPA, do either of you two have an update?
Yeah, I've got one, Wes. I think Lauren mentioned, there's the Water Resources State Fund that was established in the statute earlier, so that's very positive. For the recommendation in establishing a new Water Resources State Revolving Fund, the Illinois Finance Authority has received authority to proceed and looking at a program framework for that. I also mentioned that the revolving loan fund people have been working on the loans and the additional funding to deal with lead and all of that. So there's been a lot of work going on with that. And I saw a lot of relieved faces on July 1 when the fiscal year was over and they got out their crop of loans out for that. So that was always positive. And I think that is, and I think there's always the work on trying to do outreach to different communities about the program. So that's been going on a lot, trying to speak to more groups about the funding that's available for the revolving loan fund. So that's it on that one.
A question on that, maybe it's a question for Zach. When we had first talked with Finance Authority, and and it sounds like there's some great opportunity there to make that happen, but I think we're eligible to get some, basically like some starter funds that came through IEMA. Is that still in the works?
Yeah, we're still working on it with IFA, it's legal and our legal to figure out what mechanisms we need to put in place to even ask for that money. The next round of leave is in October. Obviously, we're not gonna make that deadline, so we're looking at another 6 months, March, would be our next. I'm assuming it's gonna be March. FEMA's been pretty, fluid with their release of any kind of funding opportunities right now, obviously with the disasters. But we're still trying to work with our legal assistants to get those in place to ask for that amount of money. Michigan did it, they asked for 5 million, and honestly, they're still in the very beginning stages, and that's been 3 years, so. They haven't awarded any of that money yet, so we're still working through all the complexities right now.
Thank you for that.
Anything else on long-term funding?
That's it for me.
Okay, thanks. All right, we'll move on to water sustainability. Wade, do you have any updates?
Yes, at this time, we are working with CMAP and Tri-County Regional Planning Commission to renew agreements supporting our water sustainability effort in those regions. We expect the new agreement will start the beginning of next year. We also work with State Water Survey, a new contract to technically support the state water supply planning program statewide. And under the new contract, we will tackle recommendation number 4 and number 5 of the sustainability section of the state water plan. Those recommendations are the impact of evaporation under climate change and the minimum flow protection associated with surface water availability. So, those work I also expected to start, next year, sometime next year. Also, IDNR was pre-selected for federal funding by EPA, US EPA's Change Network Program. We will work with this funding. We will work with Upper Mississippi River Basin Association to establish a water use database, which will be used for all 5 UMRBA states.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, exciting news to hear that we'll have a couple. I know I was looking forward to seeing what the impacts of evaporation are with climate change. That hasn't been looked at since I think the 1950s. So it'll be interesting to see the outcomes of that and the climate change. We always found out rainfall and temperature, but curious to see how evaporation is impacted by all the climate change that we've seen over the past couple of decades. Anything else on water sustainability? Any questions? Hearing none, we'll turn it over to Peg with Lake Michigan update.
Sure. So in the coastal program, we've been pretty busy trying to get some money, from federal sources into the state for some restoration and resiliency projects. So through our annual kind of allocations that we get from NOAA and EPA, we've given out in the last, we just finalized grant agreements for about $1.5 million that is going out to coastal partners for engineering, planning, and design for restoration projects, as well as, related to recreation and access, but also, we get a lot of, we support a lot of education, within the coastal zone as well around various, coastal issues. So 16 partners in Lake and Cook counties received grants, from us. Probably still signing some of those, but that's exciting. And we also, in July, we submitted about $20 million in requests to various federal sources for coastal restoration projects. We've been invited back so far for $6.5 million for full proposals. So one for a green infrastructure project in the city of Chicago and one for ravine restoration in Lake County. So fingers crossed there. We're looking good on a few others too for being invited. So trying to get on the ground and do some good work. We continue to participate in a number of resiliency planning projects and efforts for Lake Michigan and the Great Lakes. So the Army Corps' Great Lakes Resiliency, what's the Great Lakes Coastal Resiliency Study with Army Corps and all the other Great Lakes states. So that project continues. There's not a ton to report out on at this current moment. We completed a number of public meetings earlier this year to develop a shared vision, and now we're trying to implement that shared vision. And we also are developing more regional-based plans for the north and the south coastal regions in Illinois here. And then what else are we going to talk about? Oh, and we also got to celebrate the new Breakwaters project up at Illinois Beach State Park, which was exciting. Saw some other folks here, there. And there's, I don't know, Steve, if you want to talk about anything that Russell had provided me some updates. I don't know if you can do better justice than I can, but he was, also talking about the water audit software that we've been working on, City Chicago Advisory Group survey, and the repeal of the prohibition on water reuse. So I probably can't do those justice, but those are other good updates.
I'll be talking, I talk about the, it's gonna be in my topic about provision and water reuse, but,
Then we'll see.
one of the challenges with like Lake Michigan is that, communities that get allocations of water from Lake Michigan have to use this AWWA free water audit software. That's what we use right now. And while it does the job, it's got a lot more whistles and bells than we need. And the challenge is that even with the current software, we have a lot of struggles with the folks that use the software may not necessarily need to be using it. And it's like looking at potentially building something different that would, we want to look at something that meets our needs and make sure that we don't have to maybe do as much quality control data that we get. I think when we started using this software, it was, presented to us and we started using it, and the communities, the water users, have a lot of struggles with it. And it takes a lot of staff time to make sure that we're getting accurate data, because we have to report that to the other states. We need to have an accurate data. It's a huge struggle for us right now. So, we've got some ideas. I think that, we've had staff come up with some plans about different ways to come up with something. I think we have more work to do. So, that's.
Yeah, we might, Trent, we might turn to you, for example, because I think some of where our mind is going on that is maybe more of a trends analysis. Like maybe kind of some of the science that you deal with on a more regular basis, but rather than a hard number or percentage, do we regulate by more of a trends analysis? The trending, up or down or even, and what that equates to. And I don't know, Steve, if you're gonna talk about the survey and that in your report, or I can mention that, now that we also have, we as a society, ever since the compact was signed more than 40 years ago, have gotten better and better and better at water conservation, right? And so yay us, our children, that's second nature to them now, where it wasn't to our grandparents, right? And so continue to do very well in water conservation. However, we are the generation or the group that gets to deal with the fact that all of our pipes are turning 100+ years old and things are crumbling just from age. Everything's got a life. And so really the focus is on water loss, and we're seeing water loss, particularly as it relates to Lake Michigan water use, where we have bright spotlights on that perspective, ever increasing. And so by law, there's a water system improvement plan. If you have more than 10% water loss, and that's a percentage number that, like I said, we're looking at, but then you're supposed to have a water system improvement plan. And really, we've always kind of said, well, hey, have that, and the communities, it's either anything from a nice Chris Burke, 112-page color glossy, plan in great detail, to a 2-sentence statement that, our community will try to replace some water mains if we ever get money, right? So there's quite a wide range of water system improvement plans. And so our goal as an agency is to come in and really focus and concentrate, dedicate staff time to that. And so to that end, we've now sent out a survey to all like 120 or 225, entities on questioning about their water use and water system improvement plan actions, and what's planned, what are you doing, what are you not doing? And then from there, we're doing direct follow-up contact to have more one-on-one that then, helps them advance water system improvement needs. And so kind of going back to the legislative discussion, some of why we might consider, or the governor's office might consider trying to, charge for a public water resource, would be because we find that we're needing capacity to step in and help many of these communities that might have a part-time village clerk that's dealing with this for their community, the reporting and so on, and water loss, to then step in and help them with a plan to advance, water supply, infrastructure improvements, and then help them set up, not necessarily to fund construction projects, but to help set them up for the state revolving fund or other dollars that become available to advance that. So that's part of what we're doing in a more focused effort, just like we focused on water conservation so strongly years ago and are now reaping the benefits. It's time to put a new focus on water loss and infrastructure. And so that's where this effort is going.
And this will really get more with the Lake Michigan. This is it was a lot more ecological, and we had to kind of talk about some of the struggles with it. It is a huge problem. I mean, we have 225 units, not all reach Lake Michigan water, but you gotta remember that we're really we've gone through the water conservation. Chicago area does a fantastic job of water conservation. It's like, a lot of these communities, they put in water saving. But the bottom line is that you gotta replace the pipe in the ground. And that is very expensive. And what we're seeing is that it's, we're in these communities that have had, been, getting Lake Michigan water for 100 years. And they just, it's expensive. And these communities are disadvantaged. To provide a fund to help do that, we'd like to have a revolving fund, but we're gonna need seed money. And this is a big problem. I mean, part of it is that we have a limit on how much folks can lose, how much communities can lose, but, other than, having a water system improvement plan, what really is the most important is that they actually have an implementation plan, because that's the problem, is they don't have the money. It's like, and quite frankly, it's not politically a very sexy thing to be doing, is to replacing pipe, because nobody knows it's a problem unless there's a water main break.
It's a very difficult problem by me. In Europe, it's the same thing, unless losing water is more expensive than fixing pipe.
Exactly.
It become a financial model and the economical
And
problem.
that's in water, in like Michigan, it's cheaper than any other part of the state.
You're losing water, it's not expensive.
It's not expensive.
So,
No. I do agree. It's really important, and Warren, you said something earlier about making sure you're doing the outreach on fees. This ties in with this point because, if we have a long list of things that can be tied back to the list, I learned, not necessarily the hard way, but I did learn that, if you're going to raise fees, you better have a list of things that you're going to provide for all the stakeholders who are going to have to sign off on this, or could be opponents in the General Assembly. And so, it's important to do that. The thing I wanted to raise, was, is there any opportunity, and I've been away for nearly 10 years, the lead surface replacement efforts, is there any way to tie these two things together?
Yeah, we could. I mean, that's something that, it is an option, and, that's already there. There's already money there, and being able to help tie that to it. It's like, it could be something where, they could get funding from us, and that could be a match for them or something like it. But, I mean, we have not got that far. I mean, part of our struggle is that we don't have a lot of Lake Michigan staff. And that's our probably operational is one of our biggest challenges right now is that I'm in the Chicago office, I have 3 people that work for me. And it's like, they take care of all of the water audits and all of the permitting on Lake Michigan and the costs. So, it's for public water permitting. So it's like, it's a challenge because we tried to hire a water allocation engineer that they can get this person hired. And it's exactly.
And what they can compete against.
Exactly.
Anything else on Lake Michigan? All right, we'll go ahead and move on to flood damage mitigation. Tara.
All right, I'll just hit on that rainfall study is a duplicate recommendation. So his progress is my progress, so 2 for 1. Another recommendation is our Structures at Flood Risk Safer website, and that continues. And we have we had a contract that just expired with State Water Survey to help us with that web interface. We're working on extending that contract. We're also, for part of that effort, we're continuing to work along. We're finished with Illinois River and the Mississippi, and now we're moving on to Des Plaines and the Rock. And if anyone has questions, but basically we're measuring the elevations of the structures, and we're able to do some damage assessments and figure out the potential costs that might be incurred during different flood events. And we are going it's part of a Silver Jackets umbrella, but we are going out and to do a 10 outreach, attend site outreach to explain how people can use that safer website and that information, mainly how to get that information and what it can be used for. So that's ongoing, but like some of you said, that's an ongoing. So it's for the next 8 years. So we don't show a lot of progress, but divided it by 8, so, but it's moving. Same thing with the inundation mapping. We're just trying to develop a good protocol with the State Water Survey so that we can put those tools up and out there. Right now, we have Mississippi River, we're focusing on Illinois, and then all the information that we have from the safer projects that are ongoing, we can try to pull into the inundation mapping as well. The only other thing I wanted to mention, IEMA, some of the recommendations are on your end for mitigation, and I did not get a chance to reach out to you, but I'm planning a committee meeting soon, so that I really think we need to touch base and figure out a plan to move forward on some of those. Any questions?
Yeah, I think that the outreach is absolutely critical. And then as that launches into, we're gonna look further at opportunities along Mississippi, for example, with levees, right? And we need kind of base and buy-in. And so to me, being able to, particularly when we're talking about it, maybe a disadvantaged community or a smaller community, to come to them bearing gifts, if you will. That's essentially what we're doing, saying, hey, we've got information to share. Some of this could be of value to you. Let us know how we can make it more valuable to you. Now we've got their attention, right? You haven't just come saying, hey, we sing Kumbaya together, in the name of social environmental justice, right? We're coming here bearing good information that you can use. And that's really I think, and maybe this group needs to influence that. How do we go from creating it to using it? And I'll maybe look at Kevin and say that, the legislative structure that's there might be another way in which we inform the elected officials of what's there. So that they know that, hey, this state has put a lot of time, money, and energy into creating very useful information for disaster planning, services, to Zach's programs to, this is just good stuff that you can use, and then once we have your buy-in, we've developed a relationship, and what else can we do going forward? Good stuff. I think it's really as we continue to build that, which in and of itself is a beautiful thing. How do we then use that now, right? How do we take that data and use it for the advantage to the community's benefits, people who live in it.
And I did want to add, thank you for reminding me, was part of the outreach, we have, I think part of it's for the state water plan, and we've all been coordinating and collaborating. So we've got all of it. Besides OWR, we've got State Water Survey, the Corps of Engineers, we've got IEMA, and we've also recently pulled in EPA to go ahead, and we're going to talk about some of our flood programs. So not only are we going to provide that information about the tool, we're going to also just give an update from what agencies can provide to the communities during flood. It's just we have a captive audience, so we want to maximize that opportunity. And then we're also going to be asking them what we can do for them. I think someone alluded to it, that to go out and find out what they need from us. That is an opportunity for that as well.
Anything else on flood damage mitigation? Hearing none, we'll move over to aquatic and riparian habitat. I see Brian is joining us virtually. Brian, you there?
Yes, hi Wes and rest of the task force. Yeah, we do have some progress on a couple of the recommendations. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get updates from some of my team members that a little more knowledgeable on those items than I am. So I guess we'll have to wait till on the edge of our seats until January to get those updates, but we should have some updated recommendations at that time. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Any questions on aquatic and riparian habitat?
I guess I'll just add in that I think fits under this category is that, we are actively removing the Carpentersville Dam. as we speak, and the Tam O'Shanter Dam on the North Branch. And so that's all providing additional, aquatic and riparian habitat, at least opportunity, if not actual benefit there.
Carpentersville will be out by the end of the month, we're hoping.
A quick question, what is the funding source for those renewables?
We have dedicated state funds. The
Capital funds?
Yes, Pat Quinn started all that, and
Okay. Those are the funds?
yeah, well, and
Okay.
then some, right? We
Yeah.
spent through a lot of what Pat created and said, hey, there's more, we developed our priorities and our list and said there's more to do, and the General Assembly is so recognized and continued to grace those funds.
So, just for fun, folks, I don't want to take it too far off, but that will help me answer a question that the former governor's been asking me since all the news articles have been popping up. He's wondering what the funding source was, so I could report that back. So thank you.
Anything else? All right, next up is Steve Altman of Water Use Laws and Regulations.
Okay, I'll start off and then I'll hand off to Wade on a couple of them. One of our tasks was to propose legislation to regulate water reuse, which didn't pass this year. It got introduced last year. It did get passed. And then another task that we had in our group was to propose legislation for water diversion outside of Illinois. We haven't gotten to that yet, but I think it will, I think the winds are definitely heading that way. There could be a lot of support of that. A lot of folks, Chicago area, there's always a lot of interest in Chicago's water and how much water they put into the sanitary and ship canal. And folks out west are always looking at it as an opportunity. Obviously, there's a lot of drawbacks to having that, but the other thing is that, no, we haven't gotten questions in a while, at least in our office, but that is something that a group will be working on. And the rest of these I've kind of handed over to Wade because he was not here with us when we started the state water plan, and this is kind of his area.
Well, as Fedora just mentioned, we proposed to amend the 1983 Water Use Act. That is still within our internal discussion. And we haven't checked that out. Other than that, the other recommendations under the water use regulations and laws, I don't have much to update.
Yeah, and then we also, another task in our group was to establish the authority to regulate isolated wetlands. So obviously there's bills provided last year did not pass through. Both EPA, Water, DNR, and Office of Water Research has been pretty heavily involved with that legislation.
Do you want to mention, one of the pieces of legislation that we did get passed was the National Flood Insurance Program Act, but in essence, we, the state of Illinois, are our own community, if you will, and so any state, agencies doing work in the floodplain must also kind of comply with an ordinance, just like any developer would have to in any community across the state. And so we are kind of that community, permitter, if you will, of the state agencies for work in the flood.
Yeah, essentially on that one, it was like, it wasn't proposed in the plan and it was proposed for us from FEMA. So because it obviously it would, they've done some of the forensic data from previous big storms, is that they started realizing that a lot of structures that were inducing flooding happened to be built with federal money, most likely being from the FHWA. So they went out to every state. Illinois was not the only one. We had an executive order in place. FEMA felt that didn't work. It really had no teeth. So we went through the process and proposed legislation, got support, and Illinois was, I believe, the first state to get it passed. So we're working on, we we've got draft of administrative rules for emergency right now. We're working on the final rules this coming year. And we're also working with our state DOT. We're gonna have training so that they understand what it takes to be a floodplain manager. And, there were lots of discussions, obviously, many of them were very tense, because they're asking to do something they quite frankly hadn't been doing. So that element is a big testament to the work of the folks Warren and Aaron Conley. A lot of the work they did, because seriously, we presented on the, at a national conference last year, and other states are saying, there's no way we can even get this done. So they're trying to, it'll be interesting to see how this goes in the next couple of years. I think it's gonna grow eventually, we want to weave it into the fabric. I think they probably should have been done that way all along. And, especially from what I understand, it was Harvey was the one that they really had a lot of issues with in the Houston area, which I used to live in Texas, and I know that they regulate, but they really don't regulate, so. Yeah.
But really kudos to Kevin Romo and his legislative team that really helped us push that through and get that bill into law, like you say, first in the nation. So thank you for that.
And that becomes effective first reading.
Anything else for water use laws and regulations?
Real quick on diversion, I know that's part of one of the efforts there. We, the state of Illinois, and through OWR, we're actively involved with UMRVA, being one of the 5 Upper states. The water diversion and included diversion charter is a part of that organization, where the 5 states are required annually to report on any known water diversions outside of the basin. Recently, there has been a proposal that has been offered, and UMRVA has been discussing, and now I think DNR has also been asked to weigh in the diversion from the Missouri River to North Dakota. So, as those diversions continue to be more frequent due to the water challenges on the west, we're going to continue to see that and have to react to that and take position on that. So that is one that we're tracking. Folks who haven't heard of it may hear of that soon, but again, I think it just promotes the fact that, we need to have that position, and we need to have the definition and action for that out of basin diversions as they continue to come forward.
Because I think we find that, I can't remember the percentage, but especially when we get into drought conditions, that Missouri is contributing 75% of the flow. To Mississippi in that period, so diverting water away, out of the Missouri, that has an impact in Illinois. On the flip side, I would report that we're also dealing with the lower Mississippi states looking at that issue and saying, hey, how do we get more water in here during these kinds of low flows? How do we ensure, and maybe this is our transition to navigation next, but how do we ensure navigation and natural resources during these, low flow and more frequent perhaps low flow conditions? And so they're saying, maybe we should just divert a whole bunch more water out of Lake Michigan and have it go down the Des Plaines and come into, into the lower Mississippi. So, that is something that we have certainly voiced opposition to, not wanting to open that Pandora's box for that purpose, but you do have the southern Mississippi states with that as a serious consideration in front of them for what they would try to do as a nation to ensure navigation and some of those operations of the lower Mississippi. So diversions become a really big deal.
Has there been any discussion on, maybe not the size of the Mississippi, but some of the smaller rivers that feed into the Mississippi? A lot of ecological, aquatic habitat and ecology depend on that wastewater now.
Right.
You could say that's not natural, but that is now the current conditions. So you have an ecological impact by removing that water.
They can come back and get all their turf back.
Another layer to that onion might be the recent groundwater case, the groundwater case between Tennessee and Mississippi, right? So the Supreme Court opened up a whole can of worms with allowing for suits in that way. And that actually could be an opening for a southern state to sue Illinois or any of the Great Lakes states for potential diversion. I mean, it's possible. Who knows? I mean, reading those tea leaves are going to get harder and harder with SCOTUS.
All right, moving on. I don't see anybody from IDOT on virtually or here present. So we may have to skip navigation. Unless I'm missing it. Anybody online for navigation? Didn't think so. So I see Brian is on with the Department of Ag. Brian, do you have any updates on the recommendations for the erosion sedimentation topic?
Yeah, I do actually. So I know a lot of this, of course, the whole thing is around erosion and sedimentation. Here on the last couple months, we've had considerable traction, specifically here at the department, with potential grant funding to help most of this statewide. Just kind of go through things right now. We've got about a $1.25 million RCPP grant through NRCS that's strictly for climate smart practices. We just were awarded another one, which is a tri-state RCPP called iCover. Totals about $24.5 million, and that is to use non-traditional applications for cover crops, more specifically autonomous and drone vehicles. So trying to establish those cover crops a little more early, better winter coverage for them. And then a really big one come down the pipe about the 1st of September, the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant. This was a grant awarded by US EPA to Illinois EPA, which we were a part of. The whole ball of wax for that is $430 million for greenhouse gas reduction coming to the state of Illinois. The Department of Ag will receive roughly $73 million of that. There's $56 million set aside for the conversion of conventional till to strip and no-till, and another $13 million set aside for cover crops. So basically in the next 5 years, we're going to have $100 million available for climate smart practices, which will address the sediment and erosion issues across the state. You kind of break it down on an annual basis, it runs about 22 to 23 million a year. So we've got a lot of stuff in the boiler works. We've got a lot of work ahead of us. Also going with, I've had another conversation with the Lieutenant Governor's office specifically about stream bank erosion and sedimentation. Dr. Margonaut from the U of I, one of the leading professors and researchers on phosphorus attached in the stream, has got some really good groundbreaking research it's kind of been out for about the last year on legacy phosphorus in the stream bank. Because if you've kind of watched the nutrient loss reduction strategy, we can manage our nitrogen numbers, but we've really been scratching our heads on why the phosphorus numbers keep rising. Kind of short story, this phosphate is locked into the sediment, and with our higher rain events and intensity, and now having a drought in most of the 2/3 northern part of the state, and when we do have a rain event, the intensity is higher, therefore it is releasing that phosphate that is in those stream beds and banks. And some of this phosphate has been actually dated all the way back to the very early part of the 1900s. So this phosphate is not going anywhere. So basically we're going to have a phosphate issue for a while unless Illinois really invests some large money in stream bank stabilization and restoration projects. And the last one, We're working with NRCS again. This is for a really large grant to do with what we have to classify as air quality, that will address the dust issues along Illinois interstate systems. And that's really about all I can say with it because we're such in the very infancy of addressing that. So I know it's not very specific to the group, but it is very specific to the title of the group.
Very good. All right, well, we'll expect great things from Department of Ag then with all that funding coming through. We should be setting the bar high for you guys.
Yeah, I think I've got my work to retire out on.
Hey, Brian, this is Tara, and it's great, and what Wes just said, it'd be great to see how these actually apply to your recommendations. So maybe by January, you can try to see which categories fit with each, because you have a lot of recommendations.
Yeah, and that's the thing is we're just trying to get a lot of this finalized. As you know, working with any grant and specifically the federal government, finalization of stuff takes quite a bit. I know it took us almost a year to have one fully negotiated. So yeah, so as soon as they're fully negotiated and nothing changes, then I would be really easy to plug and play where these check the boxes at.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thanks, Brian.
Uh-huh.
Okay, anything else on erosion and sedimentation? Hearing none, we'll move over to Laura on data management.
Yeah, we have two recommendations, and one of them was we're trying to pull together a proposal to find funding to really reassess the entire street gauging network in the state of Illinois, not just the USGS, but what everybody else does. And we got busy with some other things, and then we're actually having some conversations because the water survey is funded by OWR, has done 2 previous evaluations. And so we were thinking that we should really repeat the same procedure, but we're finding a couple other ways of approaching this. So we're trying to decide whether to revamp that to propose something different. So that's in the works at the moment. And then the other recommendation was, it was kind of create a working group to explore, it's just kind of, with kicking it down the road a little bit, but essentially trying to develop a stream gauging data collaborative or a council by which, anybody who does stream gauging in the state would meet on an annual basis and really try to promote collaboration and leveraging resources to meet everybody's needs. And as we were talking today, I'm thinking this actually might be a good group, a subcommittee off of the statewide plan task force. So maybe we might want to, revisit that, rewrite that a little bit or something, but I'll go ahead and see if I can come up with something alternative. But because then that group can then report to the task force to determine, how well the stream gauging network is serving everyone's needs and maybe where priorities are and trying to find funding or, cobble together and create funding between several groups. But those were the two main recommendations for our group.
Thank you, Laura. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Laura?
I guess maybe a comment, I know that in Iowa, and of course they got some federal funds that they were awarded or that they won that came their way, but, they went to more of just a quick, like putting whatever, like, a sensor on county bridges and whatnot to get monitor flood, depths only, or that was all they really needed. But, you could get on your cell phone and know, boom, what's happening in a lot of places, so I kind of, I've wondered about that in Illinois. There's places that we need full on gauging, right? Many of those are already covered, to the extent that the scientists do that level of stream gauging. And so is there a greater need more for less intensive, maybe more quick and dirty, to use that expression, at greater locations across the state for gauging?
That's what we can discussing, and that's why we're thinking a different approach on doing an overall assessment. We have to make sure that the heavy hitters that we have as far as the stream gauging stations that we have, and making sure that they're meeting our underlying issues and they stay stable. And one of the comments from the subcommittee was just, there's not enough long-term stations. And of course, there's no, especially the precipitation frequency, maybe the more recent stations we need to know, or, some, stream gauging light. I know that the USGS has things like that, but, so really trying to, if we're gonna assess, we're gonna maybe assess what we already have, but then what could be added, what's a layering that can be added. So that's why we decided to back off on the traditional proposal that we were thinking about.
Okay, anything else on data management? All right, with that, we'll move on to recreation. I think Michael's not able to join us, but I did see Seth was on. Seth, do you have any updates on recreation?
Seth Love here. At this time, we do not have any updates. We're kind of experiencing some funding and staffing issues which are hindering our ability a little bit. So at this time, I don't have any updates.
Anybody got any questions for Seth on recreation? Hey, seeing none, that completes all 13 topic updates. So thank you all for the updates on there. From that, we'll just kind of move on, just kind of hitting some old business. Just a quick reminder that in prior meetings, we talked about duplicate recommendations and making sure that we're collaborating on those to either have consistent reporting or maybe even eliminating it out of one of the topic regions and only letting one person report on that. So just a reminder, we kind of decided to let the topic leads coordinate that and do that. So if you haven't done that yet, please continue to do so. And I guess I'll just open it up now. If anybody has any new business, if there's any new business or public comments, any of the above, feel free to unmute or raise your hand and raise any questions or comments you have. So, Amy, I see your hands raised. You have something?
Yeah, hi, thanks, Wes. I just wanted to chime in and share with the group that the USGS Central Midwest Water Science Center Director is continuing to support one of our USGS regional offices this year. So Gary Johnson, who most of you know, will be our acting center director. Actually, he is now starting October 15th, 2024. So I think, as Laura mentioned, stream gauging cooperative, Gary or our data chief, John Loggeman, would be great to be involved with that group.
Very good.
Plus, I had one more thing. It's not really new business, but just the whole disadvantaged communities, one of the recommendations was to determine if there was a one type of an index that we could use, or if each topic had its own. But I do know, I just want to remind everyone that a lot of our recommendations focus on disadvantaged communities, and as a group, as a task force, we can't forget about that. And we can't forget that a lot of our recommendations hinge on selecting certain disadvantaged communities to focus some of these efforts. So I didn't hear much today about disadvantaged communities. I don't want us to forget, but I have talked a little bit with Lauren. There are different agencies out there, in federal agencies and state agencies all use different ones. So I might send out, with Wes's permission, I might send out a quick, hey, what are you guys using? And we could talk about it maybe next month and just say, as a group, should we pick one of these? I can do a little summary or something, just because I want to make sure we're including that facet of this state water.
And we've, going back to legislation, we've kind of been forced to pick one, at least for the moment, for our draft legislation, based off of what grants used, I think. But you're right, to your point, there's opportunities where we have to define when we ever mention disadvantaged communities, what we mean by that. So,
A lot of topics you guys are bringing up as far as grants. A lot of the projects can fall underneath like the BRIC program. And there's a different point rating for disadvantaged communities and everything underneath the programs. But the problem is they still have to come up with their local share, which is an issue. But it's not always cash money that they have to bring to the table. It can be other sources and other types of funding. But it's
No, that's great. I mean, I know, again, a lot of the grants have some requirements, but as a water resource group, it would be good to sort of be at least on the same page, or at least acknowledge and recognize what everyone's using, so that we can all move together.
Any other general comments or public comments? Okay, hearing none. That about wraps up this meeting's agenda. Next meeting will be January 6th, excuse me. 1:30 will be moving back to virtual. Topics of discussion for the agenda. I heard we'll maybe hopefully be making some progress on some bylaws for the task force. Maybe Tara, I'll work with Tara about getting out some information on what index we want to look for to helping adverse affected communities. And we also talked about those funding summaries, where there's grant funding available, so maybe we'll be able to report a little bit on that. Is there any other topics of discussion or areas of interest that the group would like to bring up? Well, if there is, like I said, I'll be sending out a follow-up email. Feel free to share any suggestions that you have for the group and let us know. And with that, I'll just turn back to Lauren.
all right, yeah, thank you, everybody. Thank you for your time this afternoon, and Wes for your leadership taking us through the agenda as always. I guess I'll just wrap up by saying, thank you to everyone that's been engaged as I reflect back now that I'm looking to step out or step sideways. And 7 years ago when I was asked to be full-time director of the Office of Water Resources, and Wes Couture came in my office and said, hey, don't forget, like Thursday, we've got State Water Plan Task Force and you're the chair, and you got to cover that. I'm like, well, what? I said, I remember, Gary Clark or Arlen Jewell mentioning something like that, some meeting, and we had it. And at that point, it had really become very groundwater focused, kind of just a dog and pony on a groundwater, and I'm like, I don't have time for this, right? I think let's see what I can do to kill this and get this off my calendar. And I did, to my own credit, if you will, I decided, well, at least now I want to find out what I'm killing, and before I put twist the knife and put this to death. And the more that I saw what the task force really could be, much of what we've discussed this afternoon, that it became very apparent that, holy cow, this is a powerful thing that just has gone too much in neutral. And so really went the opposite direction. And I won't say that Wes wasn't there really pushing me that way anyway, because he'd already caught the vision of what this could and should be. So we're like, well, we're not in any kind of a legislative mandate to do this. It just is what it is, which I think is why it became what it became. But as we reached out to all of the entities that are, now officially in the State Water Plan Task Force, I'm happy to report that everybody, without fail, said, no, absolutely, this is something that has a lot of value and merit, and we should put it on life support and go and revive it and go, not kill it. And so then we said, well, then we got to start meeting and we're going to look at creating a state water plan and folks did. And that was really a state root or a state agency grassroots effort that got us to a published water plan and to now a task force that's been identified officially in statute. And as we've discussed already, really has an opportunity to be pretty amazing. And so thank you to everybody who believed in it and has participated in it and supported it to get us back to where we are, what it should be. And I know that Rick and Wes will continue to provide great leadership for the task force as things go forward and have the subcommittees that we're allowed to have. So thank you for the opportunity to be the chair and for supporting me in that role. And with that, I will follow us adjourned. Thank you.
4 minutes early.
I know. 4 minutes early.
Thank you all.
Thank you.